Live from the financial capital of the world, this is India Business Hour with Shireen Khan in New York.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Khan and we're coming to you from Times Square outside the Nasdaq market site here in Times Square in New York. Our special coverage on account of Finance Minister Arun Jaitley kickstarting an India roadshow. It's an unusual one because it's a 9-day visit that the Finance Minister has started today of New York, Washington DC and San Francisco to try and allay apprehensions that foreign investors may have with respect to the reform agenda and the reform story, to also try and get investors to refocus their attention on India, because remember, the India story seems to have lost a little bit of sheen over the last few months. So this is an effort on the part of the Finance Minister to reach out to both foreign institutional investors as well as strategic investors and get them to recommit to India. There's an action-packed 9-day itinerary lined up. Today, the Finance Minister is going to be ringing the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange, and you can catch the action right here live and exclusive on CNBC TV 18. We will be meeting with top US CEOs as part of a luncheon that's been organized by private equity giant KKR. And then there's a lot more which we will keep you updated. But the mood on India at this point in time is a bit somber. People want to understand whether this government is committed to fast-tracking reforms. And the Finance Minister's efforts are going to be to highlight the achievements of the Modi government in the past 1 year and to also give a sense of what the road ahead looks like. We'll keep you posted on all of that. But for now, here's a look at the other top stories with Nantara. Hi, Nantara.
Good evening, Shireen. Here are the headlines you're tracking on India Business Hour. The government braces for scanty rainfall, hikes minimum support prices for paddy by 50 rupees a quintal, pulses by 275 rupees. Economists say the government action is responsible and may not stoke inflation. Government moves to fulfill its promise to provide a home for all by 2022. Low-income households will have to pay only 4% interest on home loans. Markets gain for the fourth straight day. Nifty nears 8100. The Sensex gains nearly 150 points. Mid-caps outperform. Wall Street opens in the green as investors wait with bated breath for the US Fed to wrap up its 2-day meet. A CNBC poll shows investors are expecting rates to go up starting September. A setback for Rana Kapoor in the Yes Bank boardroom tussle. Madhu Kapoor's consent is necessary to appoint directors, rules the Bombay High Court. Strikes down 4 board appointments that were nominated by Rana Kapoor. Action regarding 7 board directors stayed for 5 weeks. Relief for Tata Steel. The UK Workers' Union calls off the proposed strike after the company agrees to rework the pension plan. Stock surges by 3.6%. Bharti Airtel's debt reduction drive hits a speed bump. Deal to sell tower assets worth 3,000 crore rupees in Tanzania being called off, but the deal to sell towers in Congo still on track. Delhi government moves to crack down on power outages in the state, asks the regulator to impose stiff penalties on power distribution companies for unscheduled power cuts. The government forms 2 new committees to push ahead with the goods and services tax and meet its first April 2016 deadline. One committee will focus on the GST revenue neutral rate and the other on IT preparedness. FIPB clears 16 FDI proposals worth over $1 billion. FII limit in Torrent Pharma and Syngene hikes. Kotak Mahindra Bank's proposal deferred yet again. Strides Akolag's proposal stands cancelled. Bandhan Bank will open across 27 states on the 23rd of August. The CEO says the net worth will reach 3,200 crore rupees. Plans to have a loan book of the tune of 11,000 crores. Before I hand it back to Shireen, she's of course at Times Square in the Big Apple. Let me tell you what happened on Dalal Street. For the fourth day in a row, we saw green on our screens. Markets continue to charge ahead even though the gains are only marginal. First, let's talk about the Nifty. That gained over 40 points. The index is now within kissing distance of 8100. The Sensex, that rose over 140 points, but it's getting closer and closer to the 27,000 level, going home today 26,832. Mid-caps up and about in trade today. They outperformed the blue chips. The mid-cap index has gained nearly 200 points. Let's see how the global markets are doing. The big global story that has the markets round the world on tenterhooks. The two-day meeting of the U.S. Federal Reserve that kicked off yesterday. A CNBC survey shows that an overwhelming 92% believe the Fed will hike rates sometime this year. Most expect the rate hikes to begin from September. Shares on Wall Street are in the green, but as you can see, the gains are pretty much capped. It's barely in the green if you look at the Dow, the Nasdaq, and the S&P 500. All of them in the green, but by less than 0.1%. And you can catch all the action from the U.S. Fed 11:30 p.m. onwards only on CNBC TV 18. Janet Yellen will be holding a press conference. And straight on to the big corporate story this evening, the one flashing on your screens at the moment, the boardroom battle at Yes Bank. It's coming out to be a setback for Rana Kapoor. The Bombay High Court has ruled in favor of Madhu Kapoor, striking down the appointments made to the board which were recommended by the CEO. Prerna Baruana joining us with the details. Prerna, just to remind our viewers, Madhu Kapoor is the wife of the late Ashok Kapoor, one of the co-founders of Yes Bank. Take us through what all the Bombay High Court has ruled.
Well, clearly a big setback coming in for Rana Kapoor and Yes Bank. The Bombay High Court has, in its order said that the right to recommend directors passes on to Ashok Kapoor's heirs, including Madhu Kapoor, his wife, and also Shagun Gogia. But clearly it said that the right to recommend directors is a joint right, and any directors recommended by Rana Kapoor so far without the concurrence of Madhu Kapoor are ultra vires, null, and also void. And it has also, as far as the directors who has been appointed in the board of Yes Bank, the High Court has termed all the appointment as invalid. The Bombay High Court has termed the appointment of Ravesh Chopra, M.R. Srinivasan, Rajat Monga, Pranay Mandal, all as invalid. But of course, the judgment on these 7 directorships, appointment of these directorships has been stayed for the next 5 weeks. But clearly, this is a setback coming in for Rana Kapoor, as the High Court says that the board directors cannot be appointed without Madhu Kapoor's concurrence, and this is a joint right as per the Indian Promoters' Rights, as per the Articles of Association of the Companies Act. Back to you.
Thanks, Prerna, for joining us with that. In fact, let's take this forward. Joining us to talk about this is Shagun Gogia, the heir of Ashok Kapoor. Thanks a lot, Shagun, for joining us here on India Business Hour. My first question to you, how are you and your mother, Madhu, reacting to this verdict? It has come as a setback to Rana Kapoor, but falling short of what all you had asked the court for.
We're very, thank you for having me. We're very happy with the verdict. The court has recognized that Madhu Kapoor and our family is a successor of Ashok Kapoor for all the rights that he had at Yes Bank. The court has further emphatically ruled to prevent Rana Kapoor and Yes Bank from making any declassification applications to the RBI. And as you just said in your story, 7 Yes Bank directors have been unseated.
Menaka with CNBC TV 18. If I can put in a quick question, just to get the facts right, in ruling that all directorial nominations must be joint, the Bombay High Court has also suggested that your presence on the board is not a given unless Mr. Rana Kapoor consents to it. Have we understood that correctly?
That's correct.
So any nomination of directors from here on would have to be done jointly between you, your family, and Rana Kapoor. That's how it would progress from here on.
That's right, and that's according to the Articles of Association of the bank.
You were also given, both sides, some time to mediate the matter. If you could just talk us through the efforts that took place in that interim, which seem to have failed, because of which it seems this order has been made public today.
I'm afraid I can't comment on that at the moment.
But would it be fair to understand that there is some mediation going on right now between both sides?
I'm afraid I can't comment on that.
No, I understand. I'm not trying to put you on the spot legally, Shagun, but the thing is that, we would like to know how this impacts Yes Bank, which is a well-known bank, a listed entity. It has investors. And so if there is the prospect of an understanding between both sides, a mediated solution between both sides, it would be of material impact to the stock and to investors. So whatever you can share on that front would be very helpful to understand how this progresses from here on.
Yeah, we are happy to mediate, and as being a large shareholders of the bank, we are in sync and want the well-being of the bank only.
Would that mean that if from here on, if the two sides had the opportunity to patch up, I use the word loosely, you would maybe come together to here on appoint directors jointly?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I'm asking, Shagun, if from here on the both sides will come together to appoint or nominate directors jointly. That is the 3 promoter directors and the 3 whole-time directors as pointed out.
This is the first step and we have a long way to go. We've just received the order and we're going through it ourselves at the moment.
Okay, so can you give us a sense of what the next steps will be?
I can't comment at the moment. It's just the beginning and we have a long way to go on this.
Is there any intention to, I know that the 7 directors that have been unseated, as you pointed out, their unseating has been stayed for 5 weeks. Do you all intend to move any more motions with regards to these 7 directors or any other directors on board? Are there any other petitions in the offing, Shagun?
We are still receiving the order, as I mentioned, so I can't comment on that at the moment.
Is there any prospect of you and the Rana Kapoor family being able to work together here on in order to do what's in the best interest of Yes Bank?
I absolutely do hope so.
All right. There are no other legal details that you would be able to share with us at this point, would you?
Not at this moment, since we've just received the order half an hour ago.
Well, you would have received this earlier as well while the mediation was in process. Wouldn't that be the case?
No, but we've just received the fine points at the moment, so we'll go through it and then revert.
Is there a timeline for the mediation to progress from here on, Shagun, in any fashion?
No, we are open to it and we hope that we can succeed at anything.
What would in a sense, what would it take for the mediation to succeed, at least from your point of view?
And it's a broad question. We've been in debate on it. Can we revert?
No, of course, I understand. Look, I'm really sorry to press you. I know it is a difficult case to talk about, but it's just that this is a listed stock, and it is important for our viewers to understand how this will proceed from here on, and therefore I ask you this question. Can you give us some sense of how the mediation will progress from here on? Can you give us some sense on what your position will be on the 7 directors that have currently been unseated? Could you come to an understanding with the Rana Kapoor side to maybe allow them to continue in their directorships in the best interest of the bank? Or will it be your insistence that, in fact, those 7 directors are replaced by directors that are jointly nominated by your family and Rana Kapoor?
It's too early for me to comment on this. We've just received the order, as I said. We'll keep you updated. Thank you.
All right, Shagun, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for answering those questions. Nandara?
Right. Thanks a lot, Shagun and Menka, for joining us here on India Business Hour. That's Shagun Gogia saying that she's very happy with the Delhi High Court. She looks forward and hopes to work well with Rana Kapoor, also confirming Rana Kapoor's consent is going to be needed for her appointment on the board. But she also says she just received the order 30 minutes back. Mediation process still underway. Let's head back to New York City and hand it over to Shireen. She's got a very special guest with her.
That's the latest there as far as the Yes Bank boardroom battle is concerned. Setback there coming in for Rana Kapoor. But of course the details continue to be a little sketchy as the fine print is being poured over. But as we said, we're here in New York to track Finance Minister Arun Jaitley's meetings with foreign institutional investors as well as strategic investors, trying to reassure them about the India story, which seems to have lost its sheen over the last couple of months, at least as far as the equity markets are concerned. I caught up with Arvind Sanger of Geosphere Capital just a short while ago. He's cautiously optimistic about India in the short term, believes that perhaps we could see some sort of a turnaround as far as the earnings cycle is concerned starting June, but he believes the government needs to do a lot more to hard sell the India story and needs to get cracking on tough reforms. Listen in to Sanger.
One area that I'm very puzzled by this government is this government keeps saying that India is a power surplus country. India is not going to be a power surplus country in my lifetime. Let's be clear here. India has massive power shortages just because power plants are being underutilized. It's a structural problem of SEBs not being fixed and not being able to pay. So some serious attention to the power sector and some serious attention to the banking sector, where the public sector banks are capital starved and have other opportunities. So, those are two key underpinnings in addition to all the legislative stuff that we talk about that show the government willing to tackle the tough stuff, not the easy stuff.
And on both those issues, whether it's the restructuring of the discoms or it's dealing with capitalizing public sector banks, we're still waiting to hear clarity from the government on what they intend doing. We've had a bunch of meetings that have taken place. But Arvind, today we've seen Deutsche Bank revised downwards its Sensex forecast. It's not the only one. There have been a bunch of other revisions that we've seen come in. What do you make of where the markets could be headed, at least in the short term and by the end of the year?
Well, it certainly looks like the June quarter should not be as bad as the March quarter was. But let's be clear here. The March quarter was the worst quarter for corporate India in several years. So I'm not sure what GDP numbers are being smoked out of the statistical office in India, but, it looked like a double dip in terms of economic performance, certainly of corporate India. So I think, June may be slightly better, but I think we need to see signs. There is a cyclical recovery coming that's taken a lot longer than would have happened, should have normally happened. Hopefully that's coming, but unless we fix some of the fundamental problems on infrastructure, power, and particularly the banking sector where PSUs still account for 70% of lending, I'm not sure that we can start forming any optimistic, short-term projections for the economy or the market. But I think, medium to long-term, India still has a lot of structural positives, but I think what we need, what we have not seen from the government in the first year, is tackling some of the really hard problems, and I think that's what we need to see.
But in terms of fund flows, and we've got several global factors to contend with it as well, there's the FOMC meeting, and we should know by this evening whether it's likely to be September or the end of the year. What do you make of it, and what are you expecting, at least on that one?
Well, I think the FOMC meeting, I'm expecting, given the Greece uncertainty playing out right now, to be relatively cautious, to probably hint at September but not box themselves in to September definitely being the case.
What would that mean in terms of fund flows into India, for instance, and other emerging markets? Of course, we're competing now with China as far as capital is concerned, and look at the way that the Chinese markets continue to rally. You have the Greece overhang. You, of course, have the possibility of a Fed hike as early as September or perhaps by the end of the year. What is that going to mean then as far as fund flows into India?
Well, the fund flows, the easy part of the fund flows, the big surge is behind us, but that doesn't mean that the fund flows are about to turn negative in a big way, because you keep in mind, ECB has still got a lot of QE to do, Japan continues to do QE, and China is doing some form of, money being flown into the stock market coming from easier policy. I don't know if I'd strictly describe it as QE. But so there isn't going to be a sudden sucking out of liquidity. But I think the best environment for India has been in the last 12 months. Oil prices are going to go higher from here, not lower. We're firm believers in that, watching oil closely, that oil is headed higher over the next 12 months. So the easy stuff is behind us. The monsoons have started off well, but that's a real question in terms of the El Nino early reports. It could be challenging. So I think that the headwinds are going to be on several fronts, but they're not massive headwinds. They are less benign than they were in the last 12 months, so the government is going to have to work harder.
Arvind Sanger, Geosphere Capital, in a conversation with Shireen right outside the NASDAQ. He's sounding less optimistic from the time when Narendra Modi had gone to the United States last year. Let's head back home now. In a bid to safeguard farmers from a potential deficient monsoon, the government has hiked the minimum support price of various agriculture commodities. This is the price at which the centre buys food grains from farmers. Let's take you through the decisions now. For paddy, the MSP has been hiked by 50 rupees per quintal. This effectively takes the support price to 1,410 rupees per quintal. The support price of other food grains like ragi and jowar have also been hiked, and in a move aimed at arresting the fall in production of pulses, the support price has been hiked by 275 rupees a quintal. Not just that, there's also a bonus for every quintal of pulses. Before we go any further, here's the announcement that was made by Ravi Shankar Prasad earlier in the day.
Bonus of rupees 200 per quintal for pulses over and above the recommendations of the Agriculture Price Commission. आप लोगों को मालूम है कि एग्रीकल्चर प्राइस कमीशन रबी और खरीफ के लिए प्राइसेस तय करता है, तो इस बार जो उनकी अनुशंसा आई उसको हमने स्वीकारा है, लेकिन इन केस ऑफ pulses we have chosen to give rupees 200 per quintal.
Well, that's the government taking us through the details of the decision to hike MSP. Remember, this is something that we've been reporting here on CNBC TV18. Government of Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Punjab and several others had written to the government seeking a hike in MSP. But I just had that conversation with Arvind Sanger, and he said that investors will take this positively because the quantum of the hike has been not that significant, so it's not being seen as populist, and it will go down well as far as the street is concerned. But let's go across to Lata now. She joined us to take us through whether this is going to mean stoking of inflation or not. Lata, what do you think?
No, on the contrary, that is the big takeaway from what the cabinet has announced. The rise in paddy is limited to 3.7%. That's minimal. That is in line with what the street was expecting. It is lower than the near 4% increase that was affected last year, 5.8 the previous year, and in double digits in FY13. So actually it's a receding amount of MSP increase that has been announced for paddy. Pulses, yes, there is a 50 or 75 rupee rise in some pulses, plus 200 rupees. But you should remember the base for pulses is 4,500 rupees. On that, a 275 works to 6%. It's not very different from the increase that is announced for rice, for instance, which is 3.7. So pulses, it's a 6% increase. It's not really an outlandish increase. And likewise for jawar, 40 rupees, ragi, 100 rupees. It all works out to between 4 and 6%. It's not by any means an inflationary price increase. The second point to note is that these increases of support prices only work themselves into the WPI. What the RBI tracks is the CPI. Now the CPI goes by the actual rise in market prices. Market prices of cereals is the biggest weight in the CPI. It's a 4% weight. So rice is very weighty there. And that's not raised much at all. Market prices of pulses are anyway shooting up. I mean, the support prices work out to about 48, 50 rupees. You know, the support price stands at, I think if you add it, it would come to 49, 50 rupees. The going price, if you have visited the bazaar today, is already 90 rupees, 100 rupees, depending on which pulse you are buying. So that is factored into the CPI. Short point, none of the economists are changing any of their inflation forecasts because the support price announced is not distorting the market price in any fashion. So it's actually welcoming the announcement. That's what the market has done. That's what market-oriented economists have done, that they've acted very responsibly and not been carried away by any populist pressures or pressures related to the Bihar election. As well, there is a word of praise for the fact that they've used bonus price, because bonus is something that comes ad hoc. Now, next year, when you look at the actual MSP of pulses, you will look at it as 4,675 if it is, moong, or 4,450 if it is arhar. You won't add the 200 rupees because that's a bonus. So that is treated as ad hoc. The base becomes the original price, and therefore, any increases will not be outlandish. From an inflation point of view, this is an excellent announcement. The market couldn't have asked for more.
Right, thanks, Lata, for joining us. With that, the government hikes the MSP for paddy and kharif crops, but all economists don't expect that to have an impact on inflation. Here's the other big announcement made by the Cabinet today. The government's Housing for All scheme got a major push. The Cabinet revising the interest rate subvention scheme for LIG or low-income group housing, as well as EWS housing, which is for the economically weaker section. The new rate being subvented by 6.5%, which in turn brings down the interest payable to just 4% per annum. This additional subsidy is going to be borne by the centre. Now, the country's second largest private sector lender, HDFC Bank, has heeded to the Finance Minister's call of a faster dissemination of repo rate cuts to consumers. The bank has cut base rates by 15 basis points, bringing down the effective base rate to 9.7%. This is the second base rate cut announced by the bank in the last 3 months and takes it at par with SBI, at least as far as the base rates go. The Foreign Investment Promotion Board has cleared 16 FDI proposals worth over 6,700 crore rupees. 21 proposals were deferred, 6 were rejected. Here are the key decisions. FI investment in Torrent Pharma can now be 35%, and Syngene has been allowed to raise foreign investment up to 44%. In fact, the stock was also up and about in trade today. However, no such luck for Kotak Mahindra Bank. The FIPB once again deferring that proposal to hike foreign investment limit. The government has rejected the FDI proposal of Strides Arcolab. The company was planning to issue shares to non-resident and resident equity shareholders of Shasun Pharmaceuticals under a merger scheme. And Shireen, you have the other big story coming in from Bharti Airtel.
Well, that's right. But before I get to Bharti Airtel, just a quick word that 6,700 crore number in terms of the FDI proposals that have been cleared is certainly going to be something that the Finance Minister will talk about here when he addresses investors at the New York Stock Exchange. But talking about Bharti Airtel, its endeavor to try and cut down its mammoth debt of about 60,000 crore rupees via a stake sale of its tower assets in Africa has hit a roadblock. At least it seems so for now. Let's go across to Kritika, who takes us through that story. Kritika, what's going on with Bharti and its sale of its African tower business?
Was of course crucial to at least partially bringing down the Airtel's 60,000 crore rupee debt. Now, the valuation that we pegged the deal to stand at, this wasn't officially disclosed, but we understood this was around 3,000 crore rupees. The main issue here really was that Helios Towers was willing to pay around 2,500 crore rupees and Airtel was quoting 3,000 crore rupees, 3,000 crore rupees roughly. So what we understand is there was almost around 400 to 500 rupee in terms of 400 to 500 crore rupee difference in terms of the valuation that they were quoting. Now, what happened is that in the whole negotiation period, there is essentially a time period that you need to close a deal specifically as per the African regulations, and they ended up lapsing that particular time period. However, there are only the deal between the two companies in two geographies has been cancelled and two still remain. So at least there's some kind of good news there, but 3,000 crore rupee hit is substantial for Bharti Airtel at a time when they're significantly looking at bringing down their debt.
All right, Kritika, so it's a setback there as far as Bharti Airtel's plans to cut its debt is concerned. But good news coming in for Tata Steel. This is a story that you've been tracking for a while. We understand now that the unions have finally agreed to call off their strike. Take us through the details and what we can expect as far as the road ahead is concerned now for Tata Steel.
Well, Tata Steel, of course, had reached out to ACAS on Sunday. The announcement had come in, after which the talks seemed to have taken some headway. And finally, there's relief for Tata Steel. Remember, the UK unions had threatened a 24-hour strike on the 22nd of June. Now, the UK unions have called that off. What is the reason for that? We understand, and the UK unions have confirmed to CNBC TV 18 that they are considering the revised proposal submitted by Tata Steel, which essentially has changes to that retirement age, which was the main bone of contention. Couple of other changes, but the UK unions have told us that some and not all demands have been taken into cognizance. So while the strike is called off, yes, and that means that Tata Steel's operations will not be disrupted, the conversations will continue. What the UK union said is that they will together work along with ACAS as well on a revised pension plan to be able to, or rather to be able to ensure that this is beneficial for Tata Steel as well as UK union. So, after months and months, almost I think 9 months of negotiation, of hitting hurdles, UK union saying that, Tata has been completely unresponsive. There's finally some kind of a headway on this, and it's a big relief for Tata Steel.
All right, Kritika, thanks very much for joining us for details on both those stories. It is a big day here in the U.S. We will hear from the Fed later tonight. So stay tuned to CNBC TV 18 to catch all the action from the FOMC. Also, stay tuned to CNBC TV 18 to watch Finance Minister Arun Jaitley ring the closing bell here at the New York Stock Exchange. Live coverage only on CNBC TV 18. Till then, from all of us here on this special edition of India Business Hour from Times Square, New York. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.